experts, please report to room A9.
So in this how-to I want to present to you how to solve the module back buttons. When you take a look, you see that there are 13 of these buttons, all with varying types of the sense back on them. So back pedal, regress, some back arrows as well. And then you also have a display which shows 0 at the start, because this display shows how many correct button presses have been made up until now. Before I get into solving that though, I'll have to get the edge work, because you will need all of the edge work for this module. So we've got 4 and 2, 4 and 2, we've got an unlit FRK, an unlit SIG, we have serial number is 6 Foxtrot 3 November Tango 0, and then we have a port plate with a RJ, PS2, and an RCA. And I think this is all the edge work there is, exactly. So let's just start with this one. A good way to do this is just for your diffuser to give you all of the labels in reading order. So I would write those down. Back pedal, renege, recede, turn back, recede again, back pedal, an arrow with a single dash, relapse, regress, arrow with 3 dashes, recede, undo, and fall back.
Emergency
and now,
cleared. All personnel,
each of these buttons basically has a letter associated with them, just in reading order from A through L, and the last one basically is sort of a submit button, which will always be pressed at the very end. For each of these buttons, you have one rule. If the rule is true, you press the button. If the rule is false, you don't. That's the basic principle of this module. But now, before we'll do that, I'll just quickly take a look whether there's any of these special cases. So, is there a return button? We don't have one of those. We don't have a backup, and we don't have an arrow with 2 dashes. So we can really ignore this. But after this, I'll show you one where this cannot be ignored. But okay, so let's just go through the buttons. Rule A is the bomb has DVID or serial port. We don't have either, so this is false and we don't press the button. Button B is this. The text on the button is a back arrow. Since it is a word, it is also false and we don't press it. C. The bomb has B or 7 in the serial number. We don't have either of those, so C will also not be pressed. There is a broken buttons or numbered buttons on the bomb. Since we've only got these 5 back buttons modules, this is also false. And we also don't press that one. E, the text on the next button contains a K or an E. So E is that one, and the next button in reading order would be that, and it has a K, so we press this button since the rule is true, and let's just press it, and you can see the counter has increased by 1. E, then let's go on to F. There are 2 to 3 correct button presses so far. Since we've only pressed this button up until now, there's 1, and this is neither 2 nor 3, so F is false. Then G, the bomb has a bob or CLR indicator. We don't have either one of those, so G is also false. H, there's another module on the bomb that contains back in its name. We have several back arrow modules, so H would be true, and we press H, which would be that one. And now we're good. 2 correct presses. I, there's a prime number of correct presses so far. 2 is prime, so we press I as well. And write that down, that it's true. J, the text on the previous button starts with RE. So J is this one, and the previous button would be that, which is regress, which is true. So we also press J. J was that. then K. There are less than 2 batteries on the board. We have got 4, so that's not less, so this rule is also false. L, the text on the button, which is this one, is not on any other button. We take a look, undo is only there, so undo is true, and we press that one. And then we basically just press M, or basically the submit button afterwards. So L and submit. That would be one of these modules done. But like we've seen, there was this wonderful special case that I haven't yet talked about. I'll see whether I can find one which has several of those. Yeah, let's do this one. So let's write all of this down again. Go back, arrow with 3 dashes, backtrack again, fall back, renege, rewind, backpedal. Now we wait for the lights to turn back on. Or maybe I can read it a bit through it. Yep, back up is the next one. Then we've got regress. Got an arrow with a single dash. Retract and return. And instead of now pressing every time I know which button to press, I will just write them down, and afterwards, when I've gone through the whole module, basically would tell the diffuser the buttons that they will have to press, either with just the letters, or you can also turn these letters into numbers, so basically 5, 8, 9, 12, 13. Yeah, this is 12. No, wait, which one is J? Yeah, no, J is 11. Oh god. But yeah, those are basically 2 possibilities. And instead of removing all of this, I'll just quickly take a look. A will always stay the same because it's ports. C is serial number, will also stay the same. D is other modules, stays the same. Then G will stay the same. H will stay the same. And K will stay the same. Okay, not J. And these should be all that will always be the same, so I will just leave these here instead of removing them and then adding them every time again. Okay, but now we've gotten the second module, and now let's take a look at what special cases we have. So we've got a return here, we've got a backup here, and these should be all the special case. We have no arrow with 2 dashes. Okay, so let's first just do what we've done up until now. So go back, we know A is always false, B will always be false, C we'll have to look at. Wait, I wanted B, I switched B and C around. C will always be false, but we have to look at B. So the text on the button is back arrow, which is true in this case. It has 3 dashes, but that is irrelevant. So I'm going to add B to here, and a list of which buttons to press would start with B. C is always false, D is always false, so E. The text on the next button contains a K or an N. We have an N there, so that is true, and we press E. Then we go on to button F. There are 2 to 3 correct button presses. So far we've got 2 presses down here, so F is true, and we press F. As well that one, F. G is always false, H is always true. And now we come to one of the buttons with a special case. I always mark these with one of these hashtags, but you can just take a look at the word and remember that it's backup, return, or an arrow with 2 dashes, not with 3, with 2. But I like to mark them so that it directly jumps into my eye when I get there. And this basically now means, if we take a look back up here, however, if any button is reached which says return, backup, or arrow with 2 dashes, press all buttons starting from the top left which have not had true rules. So basically all that were false and came before this button would be pressed. In other words, this would be A, C, D, and G. That's why I like to keep track of those as well, so that I can just copy them down here. And then if If this happens again, press all buttons which had true rules and keep swapping between the two for each further encounter. I'll get to this again once we reach the very last button. So now that we've dealt with a special case, we still take a look at whether the button itself is true or not. So we've got button I, which is there's a prime number of correct presses so far. We've got 8, so this is false. So I'm going to put I down there. J, the text on the previous button starts with RE. This is J, previous button is back up, is false, so we don't press that. J, K is always the same. K is always the same. Then we've got L, the text on the button is not on any other button. Retract is indeed unique, so we're gonna put this there. And now before we submit, we basically reach this button which would always be pressed. We again have this special case. So if we look back again, if this happens again, press all buttons which had true rules. So instead of pressing all that were false up until the button, we now press everything that was true up until now, and then take a look at the button itself again. So we would press all these 5 again. And now we've got our order. Well, I'll add the X for the last button, and this is the order that I'll just give through to the diffuser, and just quickly put it down here so that I can see it. So we've got B, E, F, H, A, C, D, G, L, B, E, F, H, L, X, and this would be that module done. And with that, we've basically covered all of the cases that are to keep in mind. If you would have a third one of these special buttons, I don't think I have any module that has this. Right now, here we have 2 with backup and this arrow. Yep, exactly. Here we've got backup, and I think that's the backup and this arrow again. And up here I've got the arrow, and the backup. Okay, so maybe I'll do this one again just to show you, but basically to keep in mind, every time you reach one of these special cases, first do the special case and then evaluate the button again, whether it is true or false, and then press it or not. And basically for the first special case you press all that were false, for the second special case you press all that were true, then for the third one, we would again press all that are false, and so on and so forth. And once you have evaluated whether a button is true or not, for example, you have F, which is there are 2 to 3 correct button presses so far. If somehow you come across the button F and have like only 0 or 1 press, and which would obviously be false, okay. This is mathematically not possible, but for example with I it might be a bit more possible. There's a prime number of correct presses so far. If you come across a button, or if you've evaluated once whether it is true or false, it will always stay true or false. So even if, for example, the first time I is false, so you wouldn't press it, but then later on you're supposed to go back through the buttons and see whether they're and well, have to press, for example, all that were false, and now this button would be true. You still press it even if the rule would now be true, because you had evaluated it as false beforehand. And now I'll just quickly go through this one again to have an example with 3 special cases. But yeah, this was basically all of the important stuff, and I'll just quickly do this one now. So I've got fallback, relapse, simple arrow, arrow with double dash, arrow with 3 dashes, back up, relapse, relapse again, arrow with 1 dash, relapse, arrow with 2 dashes, backpedal, and backtrack. We've got the special cases here, here, and here. And now I'll just quickly go through all the buttons A stays, C stays, D stays, G stays, I and J go away, and up here only H stays. And then let's take a look at the rules again. I'll say one more thing basically. In this case, I have made it so that all of the basically that I've written down all of the button labels and then solved it on my own. You could also do it if you want to interactively with the diffuser, where they basically give you a button, you look at the rule, either go to the next or press it, then you get the next button, look at the rule, etc. But I like to do it interactive, especially if there are multiple experts. Then you can have just all the information that you need and can just solve it and then give the answer through all at once. D is false. Let's take a look at E, the text on the next button. E is true. So we now press all the true presses, which would be E again. Okay, then we have F. There are 2 to 3 correct button presses so far is false. F. G is always false. H is always true in this case. H. I is prime number of correct presses. We've got 6, so this is false. I. J is text on the previous starts with RE is false. And now I jumped a bit ahead, and now we have the third special case where we now would again press all that were false beforehand. So this is button K, so all that came before K, which would be all of these, which are a lot. And then we take a look at K itself. Oh, well, K is always false, we know that. And L, the text on this button is not on any other button, which is also true. So we press L and then X. So I think that should be right. So we press A, B, C, E, E, H, A, B, C, D, F, G, I, J, L, X. That would be that module done. And yeah, that would basically be all of it. And yeah, wish you fun with solving back buttons now. If you've got any problems, or if you've got any questions or any problems that arise, for example, I'm not too sure about this rule with like changing truth values, but I think they always stay as far as I know. Please just write it to me, put it in the comments. I might do it in a tutorial then, or just answer it because, hey, I also appreciate feedback because this is my very first tutorial, but I just want to give this a try and want to do some more tutorials as well. I have a list here with some that I might want to try or just want to look at. Here we have, for example, the back buttons. And yeah, I likely want to make some more tutorials, so I'd really appreciate some feedback. But that would be it for the video, and see ya in the next one for some more how to keep talking and nobody explodes.